Hello, I'm Aaron. I'm a birding naturalist. Welcome to my channel. It's raining. It's raining throughout a lot of Central California right now. It's snowing up in the Sierra. And kind of want to talk to you about the rain, the snow in California, and in particular, how climate change is going to affect the rain and the snow in California. There is a nice storm system pushing through much of California right now. It is dropping a reasonable amount of rain in the Central Valley where I am, and it is dropping some historic levels of snow in parts of the Sierra right now. So, a lot of precipitation. It is the end of December, so this is definitely our rainy season. It's kind of what you would expect. A rainy winter in California. Rainy or snowy. Rain and snow are how California gets most of its precipitation. In decades past, for centuries, the general pattern has been to have pretty dry summers, but a kind of extended wet season. Late fall, winter, fair bit of early spring. Rain and snow would sprinkle through the area. Rain would fill reservoirs and rivers and recharge groundwater. Snow would accumulate in snowbanks up in the mountains. And then, over the course of the summer, as things warmed up, that water would flow downhill through streams, rivers, out into the bay, out into the ocean. And that snow would slowly melt, forming sort of another source of water for streams and rivers down to the bay and out into the ocean. And that way, there would be water for a fair bit of the year across a fair bit of the state. But that's changing. And in fact, climate models predict that how rain and snow moves through the state as it flows downhill or melts and flows downhill. It's going to be one of the really big impacts that climate change is going to have on this area. It's interesting that it's not predicted to change the total amount of precipitation that falls in California. So general climate models generally predict that the total amount of water that falls out of the sky in one form or another going forward into the next decades, century, isn't going to change all that much, probably. What is going to change is the pattern of when it falls, how it falls, what form it falls in, and, of course, what happens to it after it falls. So what I mean by that is that it is predicted that instead of having a longer wet season that we have enjoyed for, like I said, centuries past, that all that precipitation is probably going to fall in a shorter period of the year. So sort of a condensed winter wet season and a longer spring, summer, fall dry season. And instead of kind of having many periods of wet, sort of smaller storm systems coming through the area and dumping a bit of rain and a bit of snow, and then sort of a pause, and then another storm system coming through the area and dumping a bit of rain and a bit of snow, etc., etc. It's more going to be big events that hit and dump a lot of rain and snow in a very short period of time, and then is done and blows through. And then there's another big event that dumps a lot of rain and snow in a very short period of time, and then blows through the area. It's going to have a bunch of different effects. That alteration in the timing and the sort of impactfulness of precipitation events in California is going to have some big changes. to how water moves in the state. For centuries past, like I said, with the more gradual rain and snowfall, and the more gradual snow melt in particular, there was sort of this gradual flowing of water across the state, kind of keeping everything moving, everything kind of wettish most of the time. With that more pulsiness, it's gonna change that, and we're already seeing the effects of this right now, and we're gonna see more of the effects in years to come. One of the things that's going to happen is with those big rain, say, events, that means that a lot of water falls from the sky, right? Hits the ground, runs into streams and rivers, doesn't gradually percolate, doesn't gradually move the system, it rushes through the system. So you have these big flood events where a lot of water is hitting these streams and the water levels are rising quite quickly, and sometimes overtopping their banks and maybe causing damage to surrounding areas as it floods. And then that big pulse of water is going with gravity, flowing downhill, moving along. So it's not sticking around, which makes it kind of harder to deal with. It's much easier in a lot of ways to deal with, and this is for humans to deal with, for animals to deal with, plants to deal with. It's a lot more gentle and easier to deal with when you have this sort of longer time frame, constant, gentle, streaming flow of water rushing past you, rather than a giant torrent rushing past. And then, of course, the flip side of that torrent is after the torrent is gone, the water is gone. So water levels in streams and rivers drop quite quickly, and things really dry out. And the same thing is happening with that snowbank. With a big snowbank, over the course of a summer, what could happen, what has happened in the past, is that it gradually melts. There are two things that are going to change that, though. One is global temperatures are on the rise, and when you warm up snow, it melts. So that's going to affect the longevity of our snowpacks up in the mountains. The other thing is, again, as it warms up, it's not going to be necessarily snow all the time, right? You're going to get snowstorms, big piles of snow. But then, when that warmer season comes, it's going to come earlier, which means there's going to be more rain, and you're going to have rain on snow events, which melts the snow really fast. So you get this extra big pulse. You get the rain coming down the mountains, and you get all this melted snow right behind it, and it all comes down together. And when it's all gone, it's gone. There's not a huge bank of snow waiting up in the mountains for months and months and months. It's all been washed away in this giant pulse of water. Which means then you're looking at a really bad situation. You're looking at a spring and a summer and a fall where there is no, or at least very little snow up in the mountains. And so that sort of battery pack of water that could recharge the whole system has already been drained. It's already been spent. It's gone. Which means that things are going to get drier and drier and drier throughout the spring, summer, and fall. And by the time you end up, late fall, it's going to be really dry. It's not going to be good. And that is exactly what we're seeing happening more and more and more right now. This is why you can get this weird sort of pairing of situations where you can have floods, big floods sometimes, historic floods, and drought in the same year. Huge pulses of water coming through. And then long periods where there is very little water, where things are really drying out quite a bit, where plants and animals are really stressed because there is just not enough water in their environment for them. And then this leads to other sort of climate impacts like fires. Fires burn a lot better when the fuel is really dry. So, climate change is definitely already starting to impact California. It is going to continue to impact California. It's going to make the system of California what's called more flashy, which is the term used by climate scientists when they're talking about a system that gets sort of more dramatic in those big flashes, those big floods of water, and then much longer periods where no water is is around. And then again, a big flood of water. So it's just, the system gets flashier. So this is gonna make life harder and harder for California, for the trees, for the forests, for the animals, for us animals, us humans. And so it's another reason why we really need to take climate change very, very seriously, why we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions immediately, why we need to take steps in our everyday lives, drive less, fly less, do your part to reduce your carbon footprint so that we can all work together to maybe stave off some of the worst impacts of climate change. It's already having an impact. That's unavoidable. It's going to get worse. That's, at this point, unavoidable as well. But we do have a chance to stop it from getting way worse. It's going to get sort of worse, but we could stop it from getting much worse. And so I hope we all can do our part and write your congressman. Make sure that they know that you are expecting them to lead on this issue and actually do make distinct, measurable, impactful changes to how we affect the climate of the world. So I'm curious, what's the weather like where you are? And what I'm more curious about, what's the climate like where you are? Leave me a note in the comments about maybe some of the changes that are predicted to the climate of your part of the world. I'd be curious to know where you are and what the future looks like. So I hope, understanding a little bit more of the flashiness of the system, about how water accumulates in the Sierras, how snow accumulates, how it disappears, what that sort of does to the whole water system of the state was useful, was interesting. And yeah. Gonna be interesting. Hope you all manage to stay dry and warm in this wonderful storm system that we are having. And until next time, enjoy the natural world.